Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Arnis Luks here at the Crossroads, and I'd like to welcome our guest panelists from Victoria, Judy Auchterlonie. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you, Arnie. Good morning to you both.
And from South Australia, Beata Luks. Welcome, Beata.
Good morning, both.
No worries. Now, the title on today's forum, Deconstruction of the Family by the Marxist Dialectic. And I know that certainly sounds a mouthful, and I'll just put some opening salvos as how I see things in the Marxist dialectic. The feminist movement and the Me Too movement is essentially an anti-male. It's an anti-male movement. But if you follow the feminist thinking through sufficiently, you'll see that the role of the breadwinner is equally responsible to both male and female. And what it does in effect, and I saw it even this morning, was a young mum packing her child up in the car to take them to childcare while she went out to work. And the effect of the, if you like, the responsibility to work, equally shared on both parties, is causing the family to suffer, deconstruct. And that's how I see it, that the responsibility to work, and especially in a time of automation, advanced control, computers, technology, we are producing an abundance, and yet we still insist the responsibility of everyone to go out there and work, no matter how much is lining up in the shelves in the stores. It's to me, it's a false sense of reality. Anyway, I'll open it up to the floor. I'll start with Judy. Your thoughts, Judy?
Mum's having to go out to work's always an issue, isn't it? And they make massive sacrifices and work very hard to do that. If we could turn that around, I think that would be special. If the family unit has to suffer when mum, I know a lot of people get upset when you say it, but the family unit must suffer when mum works. It puts pressure on her and pressure on the children, and I don't see it as, in the long run, being any beneficial, having any beneficial purpose.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate your candidness on that, Judy, because to me, it's I can't agree more that there is a significant family price to pay with mums going to work. Beata Lukes, your thoughts, please.
Mm. Um, as we progress into this madness, of course, there is now a projected design to put all children in childcare by the age of 2. So all the moms can work then. But what does it mean to the child? The connection with his mother is broken. It's basically growing in the environment that is foreign to it, providing that it spent the first 2 years with mom. But it doesn't happen those days either. It's probably 6 months. Some moms are courageous enough to do 2 years and then go part-time and so on. So they're trying to salvage something. But I think it's Marxist dialectic is pushed to such an extent that every thought that is produced in the head of the child needs to be produced by somebody who knows why and what they're doing. So the influence of the family is not very desirable to those designers, is it?
Yeah, no, that's a very
And
good point.
this is tragic. This is
It,
tragic.
exactly right, Beata, that the that children going to attendance centres, child minding, and things like that, and then of course being, as I see it, handed over to people to actually indoctrinate them instead of actually educate them, and it is entirely different. So you're handing it over to the state to bring up the children instead of allowing it to happen within the family unit. And that is a deliberate policy. It's a deliberate policy. The objective is to deconstruct the family. To me, that's quite obvious in it when we've got a stage of underemployed, so many underemployed Now, why the dickens don't we actually be pro-family? Why don't we actually be allowing the family to actually nurture children and to bring them up in a wholesome environment? Why not allow the family to have sufficient land to actually grow a part of their own food supply so that the child can engage with the natural world? But of course, you look at it with the high rise and everything else that's going on, it's the individuals are being separated from the natural world. They're being put in basically cocoons in cells like battery chickens, the high rise. Such a small footprint, no land, no relationship with plants, life, birds, animals, whatever. And it really is a deconstructing of the family. And we need to recognize it. Because
It's
if we're going to find our way out of it, it's on this basis. Beata, you've got to have more.
just one word. It's a beehive. It's a lot of
Oh,
activity.
yes.
It's a lot of buzzing. It's a lot of noise.
Yes.
Mm. And we're
It's
not
a
bees.
beehive.
Yeah, and we're not bees. We're human
Mm,
beings. There's so
yeah.
much more to us. And I find it fascinating that given an opportunity to find expression, I absolutely thrived on it my whole life. It was actually a creative instinct in me, and that can only happen if I have the freedom to choose things. And I was fortunate when I went out, and if you like, my future was reasonably secure, and so I could choose things and I could be creative, and that creative expression. Whereas if you're in a beehive, if you're in a chicken coop, then of course the opportunity to find expression is so restricted, and so it really becomes dehumanizing. Judy Auchterlonie.
Yeah, dehumanizing. Yeah, that's a good word to describe it. To have to grow up without the pleasure of living near nature and just do all those things, which is, well, my generation did when they were growing up. We didn't have to live in beehives, boxes, high-rise buildings, and I couldn't imagine now, even when you see them when you go into Melbourne and see those big buildings and think of the families living there, and it's not a natural environment for families, is it? It's yeah, the answer's out there, isn't it?
It is, yeah, I agree.
Mm.
I just think of the when I grew up, we regularly had a dog.
Mm.
Sometimes had cats, and I know at times Dad would even bring home a lamb or a pig to prepare for the freezer. And to me, it was a reflection, and this is only in a suburban block, but it was a reflection of the engagement with the natural world. Whereas
Mm.
if you only go to the supermarket and you find everything prepared in packets, you're completely separate from it. Now, with my
Yes.
grandchildren, when they do visit, which is lovely, I make a point of taking them outside and picking the fruit from the trees, or picking the veggies or whatever
Mm.
from the garden, and that just helps them understand that this is where our life forces come from. It comes from the soil. Our relationship with the earth is so dynamic and so intimate that we actually need the bugs from the soil. We need the minerals, the
We do.
vitamins, the air we breathe, the water. Our relationship is so integrated with the soil. And of course, if we're living in high rise with no footprint, no significant footprint to grow our own, it becomes so very, very difficult. And that is by design. It's not by accident. This is actually by design, and that's what I'm getting at with this deconstruction of the family. Even these things coming down from the United Nations about medium density housing and things like that, it's by design to deconstruct the family. Beata.
Yeah.
Yes. I would add to the list of natural things the sunshine. If you can get it, that's wonderful. But look at the sky. What is happening to it? It's unnatural. Even that is seems to be against that against us. So
Mm,
where is the green movement on that? because nobody is touching the subject. Geoengineering is not, it's just a fancy word. It's just a smokescreen for the masses to not look behind the veil. But why is it? And what is it? And it's coming down from the sky. Why is it polluting us?
That's a particularly difficult subject, Beata, and
I'm sorry.
no, it's all right. I certainly acknowledge your right to bring it up, but I do think that it's vitally important. You mentioned the Greens, essentially environmentalists, and yet they place the Green movement is all for totalitarianism. The Green movement has its roots in communism, in totalitarianism, where government decides, or the bureaucracy in government decide everything. But I put it to you that by the outworking of their policy, the Conservatives are exactly the same because they are handing more and more power to corporate elites, to the Trans-Pacific Partnership and things like that. So they are handing totalitarianism to industry on a plate. Now, it doesn't make any difference. Both are totalitarian, and therefore the individual gets less and less choices to find expression and to find the opportunity to have their little bit of heaven. And dare I say it, that under a totalitarian regime, you can't be an environmentalist because the history of the communist nations is one of absolute abuse of the environment. So it's a false argument. It's an entirely false argument. But at the same time, totalitarianism, if it's on the capitalist spectrum, it still doesn't allow the individual an expression of individual initiative, of creativity. It's all about monopoly, it's all about control, it's all about power. So whether you, in this election footing, whether you vote for the left or you vote for the right, they're both revolutionaries. They're both totalitarian. And you've got to look at the individual who's putting their hand up and ask the question, will you start to deconstruct centralised government? And if you won't, then obviously they're an unacceptable candidate. But coming back to the family, the deconstruction of the family, I put it to you that it is absolutely malevolent. It is deliberate, and it's in the design. And the Marxist dialectic of the left and the right arguing for a new synthesis is an outworking of their philosophy. And we need to actually understand the language that they talk. And if we don't do our homework on this dialectics, then we're going to miss what they're actually saying. Judy.
Oh, you got me there, Arnie. I was listening to you. Talking about the Greens and their ambitions with their selected battles, i.e. going up to Queensland to try and protest against the Adani mine. Just one small issue that they've taken on. They are so they will not. You cannot discuss it with them. Their mindset is so strong. In spite of the fact that what they're doing is it's not saving the world, it's preventing people from having electricity, preventing people from having jobs, which in today's world we still need to have a job if we're going to have an income. And they just seem so selective. They'll protect an animal. It's just the goat farm that's very near to us here, close by. Their behaviour was appalling. Protecting animals and putting others in danger. It's not the only incident that's happened around here. They don't bother to protect unborn children, which is a heartache.
I think we we've put to me, in my view, a particular emphasis on the, if you like, the communists or the Greens, but and I will highlight that they act according to their own principles, and those principles are expressed in the book by Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, and that is that you don't debate, you actually smash. It's a violent act, and to think, to even consider that, if you like, the communist element, whether it's a totalitarian capitalist or it's a Marxist communist, to me they're exactly the same philosophy, and that's one of centralized power over the individual. And to me they are consistent in their philosophy. And that booklet that I read Dialectics by Eric Butler, and I'll make sure I put a link with this on our website. It actually shows you that they are adamant that they will be violent right to the very end. There is never an end in their violence. It continues on. So don't be confused. Alinsky promotes violence. He promotes the aggression from the left, but the fact is that the aggression is exactly the same from the right. If you follow it through, you look at what's going on in the Ukraine. You tell me there's a difference. They're all revolutionaries, both the left and the right. Once they get sufficient power, they are revolutionaries. And the if you like, the formula that's going on that we're witnessing in front of us is the deconstruction. Okay, we're saying the deconstruction of the family, but it's actually the deconstruction of our culture. It's the deconstruction of our community. It's the deconstruction of our laws, our system, our governance, our constitution, our heritage. It's the deconstruction of all these things. And I think that that's actually most profound. That little booklet that Eric Butler wrote, showing these things and highlighting it, and I'm pretty sure that booklet goes back to, one of them goes back to the 1950s. And to me, once I read it, of course, my eyes were again open, because you tend to become immune to what's actually going on in order to decipher it. So I think it really, really is important to do your homework. Your thoughts, Beata, because we're getting close to time. So your thoughts.
My thoughts on it. Well, green. When you mention green, it usually brings to mind revolution as well, doesn't it? Green revolution, that's what we're going through. And maybe it's time to look at what revolution means. And I have been again reading William Cobbett, a Protestant Reformation in England and Ireland, and also reading Nesta Webster's books,
Mm-hmm.
French Revolution,
Mm-hmm.
World Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
These are all the books showing how revolution is enacted by a
Mm-hmm.
small group
Mm-hmm.
that wants to push certain agenda. It's never from the ground,
Mm.
Russian Revolution included.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm.
only a small group pushing it.
Mm.
Small group that has got unlimited supply, as if they were printing their own money.
Mm. That's a very valid point, Beata, because it's I've recently posted up on our website
Mm,
Louis the XVI and Marie Antoinette,
yeah,
before the revolution,
Nesta
by
Webster's.
Nesta Webster. I've just found it in
Mm,
PDF and I've uploaded it, and I'm reading it, and what I'm recognizing is the pattern is consistent, that it's a
yeah.
deconstruction of culture. It's the, if you like, it's the elites within community, and those elites are wearing the cloth as well. They're behind
Mm,
the pulpit, and what they're doing is they're actually deconstructing our the actual virtuous things that we have inherited from the past. And
yeah.
one is family. One is, yes, it is religion. It is freedom. It is trial by jury, freedom of speech, habeas corpus, common law, Bill of Rights, Magna Carta, limited constitutional monarchy. All these things are our cultural inheritance. And when they're being deconstructed by the elites, and the elites include from behind the pulpit, and they're promoting agendas other than fostering and nurturing their own host culture, then I think that they have to be recognised as revolutionaries. And of course, the Marxist dialectic is between the left and right of the revolutionaries. It's all part of the same thing. So we really need to do our homework. There's a lot of things that are transpiring, and in my view, the, if you like, the rebuilding of community, the rebuilding of culture, it starts with the family, and it starts with the individual who
From ground
chooses
up.
from the ground up. It's the individual who chooses to say, well, my family is going to be protected from the state, because the state is not the servant of the people. The state is the enemy, and they're, if you like, brainwashing, indoctrinating our children, and forcing medication and all this sorts of stuff that goes on it. And so you've got to actually, the rebuilding starts from the family. Those mums brave enough to do without financial, if you like, backing and just say no. It doesn't matter what price. I'm going to protect my family. It is a rebuilding process, and it starts from one person to the next. I think it's most profound, but it is our hope. And it is our hope in a sense of how do we actually resist this behemoth coming at us, world government, if you like, communist control of the entire world. How do we actually resist it? And it starts with one at a time. Your closing thoughts, Judy Auchterlonie.
Oh, that's a challenge for us all, isn't it, Arnie,
Mm-hmm.
to look around us and see what we can do more,
Mm-hmm.
protect families.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Mm.
We're not encouraged to.
No, no. They're thrown on the, if you like, supposedly the ant heap of history and handing our next generation over to the state. It is so, so wrong. Closing
Yeah.
thoughts, Beata.
Yes, we need to stop and think,
Mm, mm,
not run out of the door on a bell
Mm.
and come back on a bell and be busy from morning till dusk.
mm.
It's we're not designed for that purpose.
That's a very, very beautiful
Mm.
point. We certainly are not designed. We're not a machine. We're a human being. And there's a spirit, a soul, and a body to us.
Yeah,
And we need to find expression. I mentioned before I've had the opportunity to be creative, and how I found so much joy in being creative. And to me,
Mm.
it's there that okay, this is our time in history. This is our opportunity to be creative. What does it say in the Bible? The very start. In the beginning, God
Mhm.
created. In the beginning, God. And he went on,
Mm.
and he is, he is continuing to be creative. He is actually participating in creation every day, right next to us. So
Yeah.
very, very important. Thanks for today, ladies. I've really enjoyed it. I think the forum's covered some good ground, and we'll continue on next week. This is Arnis Luks signing out at the Crossroads.